Hey guys, Matt here from Grassroots Fishing. Just want to do a quick how-to video on prepping your rod prior or in between coats of finish. Just cover a few things. I've been following some of the forums out there. A bunch of guys have been having some questions, so hey, thought I'd put a video up. You can catch this video on www.grassrootsfishing.com, or you can catch it on my YouTube channel, Grassroots Fishing, or you can catch it on Facebook. It'll be out there. So just real quick, want to just show you my process. Everybody's got a different process. This is the way that I have found has worked for me. Sorry about the camera. You may hear some life in the background. Life does happen. Got the family. Kids are getting down for bed. Got a bunch of dogs that might be running around. So I apologize for that. And I'm going to be moving the camera around here and there to get you guys a little better angle. So first thing we're going to do is, you see I've got a rod right here in front of me. It's on my American Tackle Power Wrapper. It's chucked in on an Alps chuck. Has great, made this job so much easier using that Alps chuck. So real simple rod I've got in front of me right now. It's already got 2 coats of epoxy on it, but I'm going to show you what I do in between my coats of epoxy. So I'm going to take a brand new razor right off the bat. Every time I use a brand new razor in between coats as I'm prepping. Razors are cheap, use them. So I'm going to take this brand new razor, I'm going to prep it. I use 91% alcohol. I'll go ahead and just put a little on my towel here. Most of your razors come wrapped in paper. That paper is coated in an oil to prevent rusting. I go ahead and wipe down my razor blades before I touch it to anything. Even when I'm trimming thread, I'm going to go ahead and prep my razors the same way. Just going to wipe all that oil off that may be on there so I don't contaminate my rod or my thread. So like I said, this is in between coats. I'm going to move this camera down a little here, get you guys a little better view. Another thing that I do is I go ahead and I pull my belt from my chuck, and that just lets me free spin the rod, so I can go back and forth. And all I'm looking for at this point is I'm looking for those little bumps. I'm looking for those little air bubbles or little bumps or any sort of things that may have gotten in my epoxy while it was drying, or things that may have happened while it was drying. So I go ahead and I look, I spin it around, I look, and I just trim just the teeniest bit off of my epoxy. I don't go too deep, but I trim a little bit to get that imperfection out of there. And I make sure that it's gone. Once that imperfection's gone, when you put your next coat on, it's going to go ahead and clear right up. You're not even going to see where you trim that off. One thing you do need to make sure is that when you do this, your epoxy is not too tacky. You really don't want it tacky at all, or it's going to be real hard to trim any of those imperfections off. So I just spin it, and I kind of look in the background as I'm spinning it to see where there's any of those little bumps or raises in it, and I just trim a little bit off of that epoxy, not going too deep. Wipe my razor blade off each time, and then I go down my entire rod and I do that. But what I like to do as well is when I start that process, because it only takes a couple minutes, I go ahead and get my epoxy mix in, because I'm going to be putting the coat on here. So I use Pro Coat. Got my hole drilled into my cap there. Pull out my 3 mLs. Get it spot on. Squirt it into a mixing cup. Get my next. Make sure I'm not getting many air bubbles in there. Get out my 3 ml. I'm seeing some bubbles that I'm not liking there. There we go. So I get my 3 ml out. Go ahead and get that mixing. I use a CRB mixer with the bearing. Thing works great. It prevents any of those air bubbles. And I'll mix it for about 5 minutes. I always set a timer. Sorry, you're going to see me do it. Set timer for 5 minutes. So got my watch doing that doing that timer. And now I'm going to go ahead and finish that kind of cleanup on any of those imperfections or air bubbles that I may see. One thing I did prior to this is I washed my hands real good as well. And right before I started, I put on some hand sanitizer, and I made sure that I got any grease off, especially my palm here. When I'm resting into some areas that have been epoxied, and I want to make sure that I don't get any grease on it from my hands. So again, like I said, I'm just spinning around looking for any imperfections. And I can go ahead and trim those imperfections, keeping it pretty parallel with the epoxy because I don't want to cut too deep. And you may see some of those little thread pieces that are poking up, some air bubbles. Go ahead and just trim those bad boys out and get your next coat on, and it'll be smooth as glass on any of those little imperfections. So I'm sorry, you're going to have a little bit of silence here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I can get all these out of here. Like I said, I've already got 2 coats on here. This is going to be my 3rd coat. It should be my final coat on this rod here. You know, and I'm hoping I can get everything out of it, and it will be my 3rd coat and my last coat. I'm hoping. And so you'll see I'm just slowly working at it, and be careful you don't go too deep. If you go too deep, you may hit your thread, and you may have issues with your thread. So I'm going to go ahead and move this camera. Now I'm going to start on my guides. It's the same exact process. What you see is a lot of people on the top side of your guide where a lot of folks do their pull through. You're going to see bumps there a lot. You know, and you just trim off that little bit of thread that may be poking up if you didn't get it nipped so well. You know, and I'm just going to sit here and shave off any of those little imperfections that I see. And it does a real good job. It really helps at, you know, those subsequent coats of finish that you're going to put on your rod. You know, and I'm just spinning around. I'm looking for anything that may cause an issue. And you know, typically by your 3rd coat, there isn't much, depending on the type of wrap that you've done, the type of thread you've used, and how thin your coats are. I go very thin on all my coats to try and keep the amount of bubbles down, and keeps it nice and smooth. I don't get much footballing out of it. And so we're just going to keep on moving down here. And you'll see me look at the camera every once in a while. Make sure I'm getting everything in there. I'm looking over at my phone to make sure I've got everything in the field of view here. You got to be real careful when you're doing the top of the guide or the guide foot itself trimming, because you're at a different angle now, and that's where you can start really digging a little too deep into your finish. So just get real comfortable with your razor blade. Take your time, get those imperfections out, and you should have, you know, you'll eventually get used to it, and you'll see how much this will improve your finish game. So I'm working here on the last couple. Let me knock these out real quick. You know, that epoxy's still mixing. This only takes a few minutes. You know, it's a lot easier, obviously, like I said, when you have that belt disconnected, so you can just spin it around pretty easily. And just continue to get until you get everything off that you think is going to be a problem in any additional coats. Alright, so that looks good. It looks like I've gotten them all off. My hands were clean. I'm not too concerned about putting anything additional or cleaning anything additional. Now I go ahead, and while that's still mixing, I go ahead and prep a couple brushes. So I use 1/4 inch disposable. I take my my nippers, and I just go ahead. Oh, there goes my 5 minutes. It's okay, we've still got a few minutes, and I just trim this down to make sure I don't have any of those ones that are sticking out off to the side. I don't want them to cause a problem, so I just kind of cut them off and even everything out and make sure it looks good. On this rod, I've got a few thin, really thin trim bands, so I'm going to cut one down. I know I can buy the 1/8 inch ones, but I don't do many thin ones like that. So I'm just going to trim one down, make it a little smaller for me. You know, like that. It's going to make it much smaller. Like you see compared to the 1/4 inch. It's even less than the 1/16 inch. But it's going to let me get some of those thinner wraps. So I put that off. My finish is done mixing. I'm going to go ahead, and as you can see, it's real nice and clear. It's in here. Still got the bearing in there. Very few bubbles in there. Take my brush, I wipe my bearing off. Get all that excess back into the cup. You know, a lot of folks use the tin foil or the tin cups. I was using them for a while. I've kind of steered away from them because I was heating up my finish to get the bubbles out. Well, I found that heating up started the curing process a little too soon. And I didn't get as much pot life as I wanted out of my finish. So take my bearing, I clean it off, and it just goes back into the cup of my mixer and sits there until I'm ready to mix up another batch of finish. So now I run my finishing with my foot pedal, and I run it under power. Helps me keep it even and keep those bubbles from getting in there. I start at my short end. I start at the tip of my rod. I'm gonna move my stuff down there. Got this to set my cup on. Move the camera down here in a second. So, bringing that camera down, coming on down. Okay, let me get it so we can make sure we can see. You'll see me work on these other ones here in a second. I'll get the first couple done. You know, so you're gonna, oh, and don't forget, the belt's been disconnected. Gotta reconnect that. Alright, so I am in the game here. This is coat number 3. Let me get it on my first few wraps here, and then you'll be able to start seeing it in the camera in a second here. And so I run it, just depends RPM wise, I just run it at what I feel is comfortable. I'm going to get that on there nice and smooth. And you'll hear it fluctuating a little bit here and there. And sometimes I even do some longer strokes, and you'll see once we get into the camera view here. You'll kind of see what I'm talking about. So now I'm to my third one down from the tip. When I run it out, I push that epoxy over, kind of get that wave going. I'm just slowly putting it on. I'll speed it up a little. And then sometimes, like I said, I'll do some longer strokes, or I'm just pushing the epoxy around. I'm not sitting here messing with it too long. It's a pretty quick process. You know, dip him. Sit here, gonna get that wave of epoxy to push over, give me that good crisp line. Making sure I'm getting over the top of the guide there. And then I look and just slow it down to almost nothing, spinning around, make sure I look pretty even and everything looks good and clean. If I see any big air bubbles, try and get them out now, so I don't have to deal with them here in a few minutes with heat. So then I come in and I just do this all the way down. And I just push it up and over and just make sure I'm getting all my finish on there. And sometimes, since this is my third coat, I'm going a little bit heavier so I don't have to come back and do a fourth coat. I scratched my nail on my guides to see if I could still feel thread. Didn't feel much, but just want to prevent having to do a fourth coat on this rod here. So just get it on, get your good clean line, come over, bring it over the top of the guide, kind of get it smoothed out, make sure I'm doing good here. And then, like I said, I'm going to get some long coats, and those areas that are problematic that you'll see a lot of issues with is, like I said, at the top of the backside where your pull through typically is, and you might just do a little extra dab there in case you had some thread sticking up from when you did your post there. And you just go down the rod, continue the process. You know, and like I said, everybody's got a different way of doing this. This is just the way I've been doing it, and it's worked for me. So hopefully you get something out of this that may help you out with your rod finish. You know, that's the ultimate goal, is just, you know, every time learn a little something that's going to help you out in your process, and you refine yours just a little bit. So I just go in, smooth her out. Good clean edge on both sides, good clean edge. Then I go through and hit me, like I said, those problematic areas where I've just had the most problems with my finish is going to be on that pull through, like I said, on the back side. You know, and you're just pushing the epoxy around, and that epoxy is going to level out for you. You know, that's what epoxy does. It levels out for you. Alright, so we're getting down to the last two guides, and we'll do that bigger area by the hook keeper and by my decals. So I get good smooth, I get a real crisp edge there. And like I said, I'm going to work some of those problematic areas again that I know I always have a few issues with some of the thread there. Still don't want a real thick coat because I don't want to start getting any footballs in this. You know, and if I can use a background while I'm looking at my finish, I can kind of see how thick that finish is going to be on there. Alright, coming to my stripper guide. Gonna get a good coat on there. And again, I'm just pushing that finish over. Good, clean, crisp line. I got my good, crisp, clean line. I'm not putting much pressure. I'm just sitting here gently touching it. And like I said, again, I'll keep on repeating it. Those problematic areas, if you know where it's at, just put a little extra epoxy there. Not too heavy so it doesn't distort what your guide route, or excuse me, your finish is going to look like. So just, that one's done. Now we're going to come to this bigger wrap here. So we're going to come to just that big open area that we have with our decal. I've already put my coats on. I'm going to go ahead and just do my edge real quick. So now I got a good clean line on my edge. It's perfectly straight because I just rolled over. Then I'm going to go ahead and do my other edge by the hook keeper here. Get a good clean edge. And then I'm just going to come in with heavy globs of finish. Just push it gently down. Keeping my cup underneath it, pick up any of that excess. So all that area is covered. Now I'm going to come and strip some of it away by dropping my brush down gets it on there thin. You're gonna have excess dropping. And then I do long brush strokes all the way down it. That helps you with that leveling of it out. And then I just do it all the way down, all the way around, just slowly rotating it with the power wrapper. And then I come in and I make sure that it's doing good with the edge so I don't get that weird shape. And I'm just take my time with it. I don't see any bubbles. Right now it looks up, there's a couple bubbles, and you can get those out now instead of having to do the heat. Then I'm gonna go ahead and finish my other side of the hook keeper. This looks pretty good here. You know, and I may even do some longer strokes on these bigger wraps here. I may do some horizontal brush strokes on that. And that just helps kind of level it out. Now I've got these smaller ones. I'm going to use that brush that I made, that bigger brush, or that smaller brush. Get a little on there. Put it in, I'm going to be able to get my good clean edge. That's what I'm trying to get. Where I'm just pushing that finish up and over. Now I'm pushing it. On this build I decided to go all the way over my hook, or my winding checks, excuse me, until it touches the acrylic, because I wanted to seal that bottom side on the acrylic to prevent anything from getting behind there. So I'm pushing it over, getting my finish to hit that acrylic, and then cleaning it up on both edges. Then we'll come down here to these. Hopefully that's not too close there. And on these are a little bigger, so I'm able to go back to my 1/4 inch brush. Gonna take my time with it though, because they're not much bigger, and I don't want too much finish past my wrap itself. And I'm just pushing it up and over my winding check, because I want to seal that end. And that's all I'm doing there. We got it nice and smooth. Same thing on this end. Push it up and over my wrap, or excuse me, my winding check. Make sure it seals that end in. And I went a little bit over, so I want to, my guy wraps, so I want to make sure they match on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new good crisp clean edge there. That looks pretty good, and that one looks good. So now we got to put some heat to it. So I grab my foot pedal, put it in my hand. I use a Ronson torch. Pull the torch, it's got a button so it stays on. This is what I've used. It doesn't get any dust on my end. I've never had an issue. When I can see the orange reflecting, I know I'm close enough. Give it a little heat, I get those bubbles out. And I'm going to go ahead and finish up on the other end. I'm not going to move the camera down just so I can get it done real quick here. And this is going to level out your epoxy just beautifully. I will pan it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move the camera here. You know, I will sit here and turn it at a pretty decent clip, or decent speed, so I'm not keeping the heat in one area for too long. And I go down the whole rod, knock this out real quick. So that's enough heat. You know, you don't need a ton. What I do, I'm going to go ahead and flip the camera down long ways here. You can kind of see what I do. I've already pre-measured to make sure my rod's gonna fit in the dryer without a guide hitting one of the support stands. So I keep it spinning a little bit. I take the wing nuts on all my support stands, just loosen them, keep it spinning. I pull it out of my chuck and I just sit it in gently, turn her on, and I like her going the other way. So what I do as well, so it's sitting in that chuck, those amazing chucks from Ron Weber, and I do want to say thanks to Don Schaefer for the beautiful PB&J color changing paint job on this rod, and to Lance Dupree from Swampland Tackle for the amazing acrylic grips for this. So thanks again, guys. If you're going to be at ICRBE, you'll see this rod there. Then I take some just pieces of paper and I go down my guides. I take that paper and I run it behind my guide just for any of that excess epoxy that may have gotten back there. This is more crucial to do on your first coat to get any of that excess so it's not riding up your rod or riding up too far into the back of the guide foot and up your rod. So it just makes it look a little cleaner. So I know this video was long, guys. I am going to try and trim it up and make the video a little shorter, but just want to do a quick video on how I prep between coats, what I do with my epoxy. You know, my epoxy, like I said, I'm not in the metal tin, still got a lot of pot life left, no air bubbles. I didn't put heat to it first to really kick in that curing process. So hopefully you guys found some benefit in this. If you have any questions, hit me up on Facebook, shoot me an email at matt@grassrootsfishing.com. You know, leave comments for this. If you have any suggestions on any other videos you'd like me to do, hit me up, guys. I'm here to do it. Love rod building, love helping folks out, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.